Testing. 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. This is MF Doug, AF. Just in case you didn't know, we are awaiting Dr. Moore's presence. So we, um, we all fun races. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Peace to God.
Peace to the universe. What's going on?
Uh, bro. 7 days a week, one day at a time.
No sense in complaining, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Well, you hang in there, brother. I don't care what you going through. Nothing that alcohol can't fix.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what that stands.
I mixed a little Everclear with some cheap Taylor wine.
Jesus Christ.
Put it in my decanter, brother. So this should be an interesting night.
Mm.
We usually talk before we go on the air, but I thought tonight would be a special night, being that it's the end of the year. And some of you niggas out in the audience are not gonna make it. Um, the expertise of Dr. Moore, without giving medical information, will be critical to tonight's episode. If you care to listen, hopefully someone will tune in. I think we had 10 views, but I think 4 of them were mine. So we got about 6 actual listeners last time we talked about cults and religion, brother. Um, any feedback from last week?
No.
Anything you came to in hindsight after the episode?
Not from my end. But that wasn't last week. That was more like 2, 3 weeks ago.
Right, last episode, I should say.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Last episode. We try to do this at least once a month because we actually have real lives and real lives to save in our capacity, whatever that capacity may be. And you out in the listening audience also have um, a duty to try to save lives, not medically. That's what we have professionals for, like Dr. Moore. But if you are concerned about anyone, that is the duty that I speak of. Am I on the safe side by saying that, Dr. Moore?
Um, are you on the safe side in saying or suggesting that we have a duty to save people?
At least our family members or those loved ones that we care about.
I don't know that you can save anybody. Honestly, I think the only person that you can save is yourself. I think that's where you. I think that's where you start.
And that's why I love you, Dr. Moore, because you keep it real. Let me explain something to you, brother. So I'm like, stop right there.
Yeah, I,
You
I,
can't
I,
say nobody.
yeah, I think that that's why they tell you when you are on an airplane they say before you try to save anybody, you that mask that flops down, you put that mask on first. You
Because it's
know,
gonna be a long ride.
you know,
All the way down.
yeah. So I think before you can do anything for anybody else, I mean, you gotta you gotta work on you. You gotta make sure that that you good,
As
and that's
Michael Jackson said, the man in the mirror is the one you better be worried about.
yeah,
You trying to save somebody else and lose your life.
yeah,
Hmm. So I know people are concerned about you as an individual, and I'm speaking to the general audience. But maybe they better let you be and worry about their own damn self.
yeah. And I'm not saying that from a selfish position, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that in that you should only be thinking about yourself, but what I am saying is that you have to make sure that you have yourself together before you can even begin to help put someone else together.
Hmm.
You know, so I think that's where you need to start. You need to start by looking at you, looking at yourself and where you are,
Yes, sir.
right?
Indeed. And on that note, you are listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, MF Doug AF. I have a title before my name and after my name, Dr. Moore. It may not mean nothing to everybody else, but it means a hell of a lot to me. My co host is Dr. Moore, a professional in the field of talking to people. Is that safe to say, Dr. Moore?
Yes, I am a mental health professional. I'm a licensed mental health professional.
There you have. So there you have it. Someone that is on the podcast, and we're not trying to give you advice. We're trying to give you information. There's a big difference, although it may be subtle to someone of lesser introduction to psychology, lesser introduction to behavioral health. And on that note, Dr. Moore, let's provide the people that may listen to this podcast with a disclaimer.
Warning: the content will examine phenomena that some would find offensive, inappropriate, insensitive, and triggering. This content neither suggests nor implies medical or any other professional advice. This is the light-hearted discussion of a comedian and his therapist friend engaged in hypothetical conversation on Black mental health and race. In no way are the following views and content associated or affiliated with this or any other platform that this podcast may be accessed. All information and opinion are independent expression of free speech that a reasonable person may freely consider adapting or opposing in their own paradigm.
All right. All right. Cut it out. Cut it out. All right. All right. Now on to the serious stuff, Dr. Moore. The reason I started the podcast off this way tonight, because the devil in schizophrenia has raised its ugly head again, this time publicly. Um, Hey, do you know who Rob Reiner is?
Yeah, I do.
Um, I had an endearment. That means you grow fond of somebody from a distance without even actually knowing them. I was endeared to Rob Reiner as Meathead from All in the Family. And he, like, it was the other brilliant director, can't think of his name right now. The guy that played in Happy Days, Richie Cunningham. I can't think of his actual real name. Um,
I think it's Howard.
what's his name?
I think it's Howard something.
Right. Alexa, what is the real name of Richie Cunningham, the actor?
Richie Cunningham's given name is Richard.
Duh. What is the actor's name? Alexa, what is the actor's name?
As a noun, accent can have a few meanings.
Shut up, Alexa. Alexa.
No, you should ask him what is his birth name.
Okay. Alexa, what is the birth name of the actor that portrayed Richie Cunningham in Happy Days?
From Wikipedia.org. The series presented life in the 1950s and early 1960s Midwestern United States, where it also featured an ensemble cast, starring Ron Howard as Richie Cunningham.
There it is. You got it right, Dr. Moore. Alexa, please cut off. Shut your damn mouth. Ron Howard, and I digress, brother, but two brilliant directors who started off as actors, and they loved the craft so much that they dedicated their careers to doing it professionally. They started off in front of the camera and ended in behind the camera as brilliant directors like the likes of Quentin Tarantino, Spike Lee, etc., etc. Tonight's episode, like most of our episodes about Black mental health and race, are about Black satire. It is a hint of comedy, but more a reality of the darkness of actual physical life. Um, Rest in peace to Rob Reiner and his wife. And the dynamic I wanted to speak about tonight, Dr. Moore, was familial or family relationships and how they can turn deadly with the disease. Is schizophrenia classified as a disease, a mental health disease?
Wouldn't necessarily call it a disease. I would call it an illness.
And explain the distinction, Dr. Moore.
Well, when you say disease, um, I I think more of something that is gonna potentially kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas an illness is not necessarily going to kill you, but it might be something that
Detrimental.
Well, I don't know if I want to say detrimental. I mean, it can be detrimental, but it's more of is more related to a psychosis,
Right.
Or it might be more related to a psychosis or um, um, a psychological issue.
Mm. In the medical field, I think they make the distinction of illness and disease being pathological. How do they explain pathology in mental health?
Well, if it's pathological, then that would mean that it's kind of it might have something to do with genetics.
Hmm. And so there you have it. We want to talk about schizophrenia within the family, where you can spend your whole life being afraid of the outside world. And the biggest enemy you may face is within your own household. The Bible describes it as they of his own household. So rest in peace to Rob Reiner, and forgive me for not being able to recall the name of his wife that also tragically lost her life. But I thought tonight would be a window, black or white, into the detrimental aspects of schizophrenia. This is an extreme case, and it may not even be schizophrenia at all. Our opinions and speculation on what it is on the surface may not reflect what the final coroner's. I don't even think the coroner can give this, but there has to be a mental aspect of it that's diagnosed, right?
I'm not sure where you're going. Why are you connecting their deaths to schizophrenia?
This is what is being reported on the news, which you have always told me to ignore and to do the actual facts. We don't have that luxury, but I thought that a conversation with a professional in the field could give us a little more than speculation on what, how would you explain it, not with the Rob Reiner case and his son, but how would you explain schizophrenia in a situation like this where it goes to the extreme of schizophrenia, where there's a death in the family? How do you explain that
I don't.
to?
Well, I well, let me just first say that I don't know the details of the case, and
Right,
I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know why people are. Why I have heard anything about schizophrenia as it relates to this case. From what I understand, is that the perpetrator is alleged to be his son.
right.
But I don't know the son to have schizophrenia. I From what I understand, the son had a drug problem.
Hmm. There you go, Dr. Moore. Can you explain the difference?
Well, if he had a drug problem, that would make more sense, because schizophrenia as a mental illness isn't that's the symptoms that go along with schizophrenia doesn't have anything to do with murdering people. That's not what schizophrenia is. Now, if someone said that he was a psychopath or a sociopath, then that might be different, but not schizophrenic. A schizophrenic
Okay,
is
so from a layman's point of view, explain someone with a drug problem that may be experiencing mental illness, and explain it as though mental illness is not something that's simply a condition. It could be an onset, meaning or acute. It just happens instantly.
well, mental health doesn't just happen instantly, unless you have like um
Neurosis.
no if unless you have like a mental breakdown. That could be instant, but something like schizophrenia, that's something that's long term. So that would have had to be diagnosed by age of 18 or so, and it would also have to have be paralleled with um, uh, um, a number of maybe psychotic episodes, you know, happening, for a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
If
And
that,
to the listening audience, you're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. We don't want to bore you or entertain you either way, but we want to make you aware of information that you should be looking up yourself and with the professionals in your life that you should have. I think at the beginning of the podcast, we made it very clear that without professionals in your life, you may not survive tonight's episode. Rob Reiner and his wife lost their lives tragically to the murder. I don't even think at this point it's alleged anymore, Dr. Moore, but I may be wrong. But there are no other persons of interest, according to the LAPD, for this murder other than the son.
Yeah, but it's going to be alleged until he's found guilty of it,
That is correct.
unless he's admitted guilt, But right now, from what I understand, is it's alleged. I don't know. Um, but I just wasn't sure where schizophrenia came into that, because I didn't, from what I understand, I didn't ever know the son to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, with schizophrenia, and that schizophrenia is something that has to be diagnosed from a mental health professional. So, and I don't know that the case, and I don't know his background or anything like that, but from what I understand, he did have um, he was a career he did have a career in drug use, which would make more sense, that if he was on like a drug binge or something like that, that would happen. A person is more likely um, to commit a crime like that, um, while being on a drug binge, as opposed to having a schizophrenic episode, right? So, because mental health is something that we all have, but we don't all have mental illness, right? We all have mental health, but we don't all have mental illness.
Explain, because that's the point I was trying to get to.
So when you say mental health is, you know, just your overall emotional, psychological, social well-being, right? We all have that. How you feeling, good, bad, and different. That's pretty normal. Everybody, we all have that. But mental illness more refers to like a specific diagnosis. Um, a condition of like depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, and again, those diagnoses will have to come from a mental health professional, and they would be diagnosable by using something like the DSM-5, and those diagnoses also would come from having particular symptoms over a particular uh, um, amount of time, because in mental health, everything has to do with time.
Mm,
So, being depressed is not abnormal. Having anxiety is not abnormal.
mm.
But the amount of time that you spend in depression would start to make it clinical, right? Would start to make it something that might need to be diagnosed.
Yeah, I get you, Dr. Moore. Alexa, is there any mental health illness associated with Rob Reiner's son?
Here you go.
And they bring up Dr. Phil. Yeah, just give me, Alexa, just give me an assessment of what's reported as the background of Rob Reiner's son. Okay, I can't depend on that. But I think according to the news reports, they were saying, and that's why your expertise comes in full play here. The news reports were saying that even as a child, he was diagnosed with some type of special condition where he wasn't like the other two children that they had together. They had three children in total, this son that is alleged to have committed the crime of murder. I think they call that patricide. You kill both of your parents. This child in particular um, had diagnoses all throughout his childhood. Would that make a difference, Dr. Moore?
When you say diagnoses, all through his childhood, I mean, he
Mental diagnoses, whatever those mental diagnoses may have been, we don't have privy to it because of
yeah,
HIPAA
well,
laws. But
no,
we
no, no.
know.
Those, I mean, so what I'm saying is he probably wouldn't have diagnoses. He might have a diagnosis, but not because the diagnosis is probably not going to change, over time until he becomes an adult, right?
Hmm,
So, for example,
explain that.
for example, um, schizophrenia is not a diagnosis that typically is given to a child. That schizophrenia is something that you have to be a certain age to get to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, right?
Hold
Historic.
on, hold on. Explain the difference between you're not fully developed until you're 25 and what
Well,
you just said about you cannot get a diagnosis of schizophrenia at a young age. You have to wait until they develop.
was typically you don't diagnose a kid with schizophrenia. There are rare cases where that has happened, but
So they're
um,
manic at that stage.
oh, no.
Explain what manic is.
So manic or mania is just it's a condition, right?
And you can't have that at a young age.
You could have that, but mania goes with bipolar. It doesn't really go with schizophrenic.
Hmm. But at some point in your development as an adult, do the two collide, bipolar and schizophrenia?
Well, I mean, I've seen diagnoses where people say the person is bipolar schizophrenic. Typically, it's one or the other. It's not necessarily for some.
Okay.
It's not both
Let
both
me add
both of
something
them.
else to the mix. I don't mean to cut you off, but if you add drug use into the mix, is it more apt to somehow merge the two, bipolar and schizophrenia?
No, not necessarily. Because that would because those are two different things, right? So that person would be what we would call a dual diagnosis.
Right.
So not necessarily bipolar and schizophrenic because they're using drugs. They may be a schizophrenic or a bipolar that's using drugs. Those are two different things. So you have to treat the drug use and um, the illness. Those are two different things too, and they're treated separately. So
Indeed.
you can't treat one without treating. Well, historically they have done that, but as of recent, when I say recent, within the last couple of years, they now understand what we call a uh, mobility, right? Or they would say a dual diagnosis, and
Right.
that dual diagnosis would be um, maybe they use crack or fentanyl, or alcohol, and they're schizophrenic or they're bipolar,
Right.
and the person may be using as a coping mechanism.
Right. And
Um,
there's that word, coping.
yeah.
And at the beginning of each of our episodes, we always ask each other, "You all right?" And we answer it in a sterile way by saying, "I'm good." We have to mask um, whatever personal problems we have when we go out to the general audience.
Well,
But
you don't have to mask.
right, but
It's not a good
just
thing.
socially, I can't bring up my personal problems on air. I could bring that up to you personally, and what we do after the show occurs is I call you back, and but for the marketability of the show, and we're not trying to be entertaining here to you. We're trying to provide information that may or may not help you. You are your own survivor. But the point was, we're trying to explain the all of the nuances or the little holes that can go through what we just experienced. Based on any of that information, without going to the Rob Reiner case specifically, do you have any insight that you can provide the people in terms of your own children killing you, patricide?
I don't. I don't have any personal, no. But I mean, when I think about something like that, right? Um, I think about um, what's the two white boys?
The Mendez brothers.
The Mendez brothers. Now, neither one of them it's never. I've never heard anybody say, well, they had schizophrenia or they were schizophrenic. You
Manic,
know, manic. I mean, but you just don't have manic by itself.
but it has to spring from nowhere, but it didn't disappear, right? Manic.
No, no. So let's say for example, if you had, let's say you were diagnosed with bipolar.
Hmm.
You got bipolar one, bipolar two, and then you have the highs and lows, right? And in those highs and lows, there will be mania, right? So, um, if you had bipolar and you were having a manic episode, right? In that manic episode, you might not be really conscious of what's happening during those stages. And in that mania could last from anywhere from like 2 weeks to 30 days, And in that manic episode, you might have um a lot of, frivolous sex with a lot of different, with a lot of different people. You might sleep with a different person, you know, uh, five five different people in 5 different days, 10 different people in 10 different days. You might stay up, you know, um, you might go 3 or 4 days without sleeping. You're just in a manic episode where you kind of just raging, and you're not even really conscious of that happening. Or you might have the lows of that, right? So you might be really, really high, but at some point you're gonna come down. And when you come down, you're gonna crash, right? And then you're gonna have the downside of that, where you know, you might can't get out of bed for 2 weeks, and you might be, in a manic stage. You might not take a shower. You might not. There's a lot of things you might not do during that manic episode.
Yes, sir.
You might go out and you, you might do a lot of things you wouldn't normally do. You might steal. You know um there was this lady. She was diagnosed with I was reading her case. She was bipolar. Um and it just shows up in a lot of different ways, right?
Yes,
Um
sir.
because all those manic stages won't necessarily be criminal. you know um let's say, for example, you're in law school, right? And um you you're you're bipolar. You may stay up 3 4 nights, in a row studying, during a manic episode,
Mm.
right? And in that manic episode, if that might work to your good, you know. Um, there was this lady. She had a daughter, and when she was married, she had a daughter, and her and the husband had broken up. And what the lady would do, um, she would she would come get her daughter, and she would be having a manic episode. And in that manic episode, she would like take her daughter to like London and take her shopping, and they would just be on a spending spree for like 2 weeks,
Mm.
and she wouldn't even be aware that that's what she had done,
Mm.
right? So during that mania stage, you know, again, you may unconsciously find yourself doing things, for a, you know um, a certain amount of time, and just not be aware that that's what's happening.
Exactly. And I think whatever we cover in the factually from the Rob Reiner case, the point is for you as an individual, because we were talking about you in the audience on the plane, and what the first instruction they have to give you is to save yourself. How can nobody can prevent what happened to Rob Reiner, but there are more cases in the black community that involve family court disputes. How can we stop them from escalating to the point where your siblings turn on you to the point where they're willing to murder you?
Well, again, you know, I don't know if I should have said again, but there's a difference between um, like a sociopath, a psychopath, or schizophrenia. Um, you know, the so for example, let's think about like a Ted Bundy type of person, right? Um, Now, I think we would call him. He wouldn't be antisocial. He would probably be more asocial. And those people, you know, they love you, love you, love you, but they want to kill you, right? Um, Now, a psychopath is someone who lacks empathy, right?
Explain that again. Between socio and um, what was the other one? Psychopath.
Right. So I was I was talking about like a Ted Bundy. Ted
Mm.
Bundy, he had real his issue was, well, part of his issue was, it wasn't that he, like some people would say he was antisocial, but he really wasn't antisocial, right? He just he had bad social skills. So he didn't really know how to interact with people. But he
Mm.
actually did like people. But he liked people, but he liked them in an unhealthy way. Because
Mm.
he liked them, but he wanted to kill them,
Mm.
right? So he would befriend them, and all of this would be, it wasn't like he was a schizophrenic, right, where he was hallucinating, or having delusions. It wasn't. That wasn't the case at all. If you're schizophrenic, a schizophrenic is a person who's hallucinating, a person who's having
Right.
delusions, right? But a psychopath, that's a different type of person. That person lacks empathy of other people. He doesn't care about other people.
Suffering.
He's a he he's a, you know he's a manipulator. You
Mm.
know, he's a rule breaker. You
Now,
know,
what if you have that in your family
yeah.
and your
Then
family is in conflict? Like, I bring this up because during Thanksgiving and Christmas, these are biggest American holidays, and the very people that you may be opposed to may be in the same room with you.
Well, well, here's the thing. If
Don't make
someone,
it, brother.
if if
Don't
if
be in the room.
well, that's
We
for
know
sure.
we know the obvious, brother. But if you happen to be in the room
If
with
you
this
happen to
person,
be, yeah, but okay.
because
So
Rob Reiner and his wife have, they didn't even if they invited their son who has some type of drug problem to a party with professional actors. This is one of the top tier event. Rob Reiner got mad at his son for embarrassing him. Rob Reiner and his wife left the party. This is the things that we know now. We don't know the mental aspect, but we know the physical events that happened that
I
made
I
Rob Reiner and his wife leave early.
okay. So here's the thing.
They left their uncontrollable son at this party.
Okay,
Instead of staying at the party, according to news reports, eventually he came home to kill them.
okay. So well, let me just
Allegedly.
okay. Yeah. So let me just say I can't speak to that at all because I have
Right.
not heard.
But I
I
want you to speak to the
okay. So
professional in
so
any family. It don't have to be a
okay.
celebrity family.
Right. So but so
If you're in conflict with your people and you as a parent are trying to do the right thing, but your son or daughter thinks that because of their substance abuse, you deserve to die, is there any way to avoid that?
yeah. Well, I mean that seems pretty obvious. That doesn't
Right.
sound
But
that deep.
as a professional, how would you de-escalate such situation? Did a Rob Reiner leaving the party early, leaving his son unsecured to escalate on the active friends that he have, was that a mistake? Not
Okay.
for Rob Reiner, because we cannot talk about his situation legally. I'm just saying,
Well,
in the projects, if you leave your unstable son in a situation in the projects, have you already sentenced yourself to death?
I don't understand. I'm trying to
Meaning
follow you.
that without the Rob Reiner situation, if you just brought this back to Lafayette Gardens, Marcy Projects, um, Tompkins Projects, Tilden Houses, all of these fucking places that this occurs every day in the projects,
Yeah, but I don't.
and that's who we want to address.
Right.
Hopefully, that's our audience, not the
Right.
celebrities, because the celebrities have their own professionals. But I'm talking about the people that have conflict in their own families that may even wind up in criminal court.
Right. So let me
How do you de-escalate that without having any professional knowledge of de-escalation?
okay. So you can only address what you know.
Okay.
So
And so
so
we want to apprise them of information without giving advice.
okay. Okay. I'm trying to follow you. Um.
Right. But you're
So
trying to follow me as a professional. I'm just talking about the street knowledge of Dr.
well,
Moore
there may not be
and
any. There may not be any
MF
street.
Doug.
Right. But there may not be any
Is
street.
different from you
I can
what you
only.
do
Yeah.
clinically. You can't do certain things clinically.
Okay.
But
No. But
how
listen to
can
what
you de-escalate a situation
I'm.
in your family
I'm
and it's the holiday season, you gotta show up.
right. Well, you don't. You don't. You don't have to show up. And it's not. It's to me that doesn't sound that deep because I mean I got family members that I'm just not going. I
Not
don't have to.
going? You can't do that, brother.
We, I
I'm
mean,
like, brother, you can't do that.
that's not that deep. I got family members right now. It ain't
Okay,
whether it's the
okay, Dr. Moore. This is where the dark humor comes in because this is the perfect, the perfect answer that most people won't get in the celebrity community, but you need to get it as just a regular average person listening to this podcast. We can't give you medical advice, but we can give you just simple information. What did you just say, Dr. Moore, about conflict with relatives?
I said I don't think that that's that deep. If you got
And
fam-
how come it's not that deep? You said something else.
well, okay. If you have family members that are dysfunctional and you know that they're dysfunctional, then you probably just shouldn't go. I wouldn't go. That's not that's
And
not
say
hard.
that, Dr. Moore.
Why? What do you mean? That's
But
not.
you're right. You see the difference between street knowledge and professional knowledge. Something about you, Dr. Moore, understands the problem. And we're going to talk about Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul's display of violence and what that means in a minute. But before we get to that, something about you, Dr. Moore, knows not to show up. And that has nothing to do with what you learn, it's about what you know. And that can translate to the audience that we're trying to reach. If you have conflict with your family members, decline. Even if they invite you, you say maybe next year because
Or
you
you don't.
know how they are.
Or you don't. I mean, why sugarcoat that? I got family members that they know I'm not coming around them. They know I'm not. They know I'm not
But we
showing up for that
started off
function.
the podcast by saying that. We started off the podcast by saying Dr. Moore, even before he was Dr. Moore, is going to give you the real truth. That's the person that we know. He gonna give you the real truth. So people that say that you changed, no, you didn't change. You have a unique perspective to add to the cognitive behavioral community that people need to hear. And most people won't hear it because, oh, this is not clinical. No, it don't have to be clinical. This is how I grew up. I need to help the people that I grew up with. I think Dr. He wasn't even called a doctor because I don't think he got his doctorate. But Professor Amos Wilson was telling us about ourselves and the things that we need to realize. If you are in conflict with your family members, don't show up at a family gathering. Don't show up at the family cookout and expect differently. Now, how do we tie this into Rob Reiner? We don't know nothing about them folks, but we do know one thing. It don't have to be factual. It don't have to be clinical. Why are you there? And you go home and lose your life. And I'm not talking about Rob Reiner. I'm talking about people in general. We know people like this every day, Dr. Moore,
Well,
that
I
go
tell you.
home from a family gathering. It always happens at the end of the year. You can attest to this, Dr. Moore. Even if it
Well,
don't end up in a death, because death is the extreme of this situation. But family members get together Thanksgiving and Christmas and they argue. They may even physically fight or end in death. But how do we avoid this? What is the CBT on that, Dr. Moore?
CBT just means cognitive behavior, right?
Therapy.
So you change the way that you think about it. Then
Okay.
you
Explain
can
it
change.
to the audience we trying to reach.
Well, again,
You don't show up.
well, even if you, I mean, even if you show up, you just know when to leave, right? I mean, I have family members, I have friends that
Right. Me too.
there's just certain events that I know when it's time for me to leave, or I know that that's probably an event that I'm probably not going to show up to. I know that if I have and I have cousins and I have friends that you know get belligerent when they drink, so I'm not going to take my you
Hmm.
know my family and friends. I'm not going to take my
People I
family
love.
around that. Now, granted, you know, I have family members that I would take my family around,
During the
during the holidays.
daytime.
Well, I doing it. Well, I mean, I'm not going to be there probably for so long during the night anyway. But
Still
especially if people are if people drinking, right? I don't care what kind of degree.
and cheap wine together.
Yeah, so I'm not going to nothing like that. That's foolishness.
I'm drinking it, Dr. Moore.
Say that again.
I'm drinking it. That's what I'm telling you. I did this on purpose.
Oh yeah. So I would avoid.
It's okay to dog me out, but explain the difference between bringing your family to a family gathering during Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and the difference between somebody drinking this type of concoction and they're not in their stable mind, and you bringing your family, your little daughter, your little son around these type of niggas.
I wouldn't do that.
Right. And that's the audience that we're trying to reach. This is a show, audience, about black mental health and race. We cannot say Rob Reiner and his family, but there's a lesson. It's a hard, cruel lesson.
I don't think that's hard and cruel at all. Because
Right.
because here's the thing. If if you're having a conversation and you recognize that the person you're having a conversation with isn't making any sense, the person you're talking to is a fool,
Belligerent.
then you are a bigger fool
Bring
to
your family around it.
to engage in that.
Hmm.
If
So we're not trying to make fun of Rob Reiner and his wife. We're not even trying to make fun of them leaving early because their son was acting. Here's what the reports are saying from witnesses at the party. Their son was going around asking people, "Are you famous? Are you famous?" And if he find out that they're famous, he disrespected them. But this is the behavior he had as a kid. He never respected his father's professional people. And his father tried to include him in the business later on in life. And they worked together. They created one or two films together. But somewhere in the back of this child development mind grew up into a mature adult
it
that
sound
had
mature to me.
a disrespect for the profession itself. So that even on the last days of Rob Reiner and his wife's life, the son showed up at this party, invited or uninvited. We don't know the actual facts. But he went around to this party asking professional actors with accolades and awards for their profession. Are you famous? That's the last thing you want to ask a famous person. Who's this guy? Oh, that's Rob Reiner's son. Don't pay him no mind. He not in his right mind. Do you see how all of this boiled together as a soup to the audience, not to Dr. Moore?
Yeah, but
It
I just
created an environment for patricide to the audience. Now I'm speaking to Dr. Moore. I don't care about these celebrities, but I do know Rob Reiner, and rest in peace to his family. that have to endure this. But this podcast is about regular folks in the projects, in the ghetto. That's our massive audience, Dr. Moore. And because we don't have celebrity in our family, don't mean that this occurrence does not happen on a routine basis, especially for the 4th of July, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. That's when our feelings as Black folks get escalated and all types of things can happen. Now, based on that, Dr. Moore, before we end this podcast, take us home.
Well, this is what I'll say, man. I think that you have to know when to say when. And
Mm.
I always say give till it helps and not until it hurts. Right. I know I'm at a place in my life where there's people that I know, friends and family, that I used to be able to do stuff with that I can no longer do that. And I'm good with that. And I'm good with with people saying that
I ain't
I've
bringing my
changed.
family around y'all niggas.
Well, I'm good with
I'm
people
saying
saying.
that for me personally.
Well, I'm saying I'm good with people saying that I've changed because I have changed in that way.
Right.
I think
That's
that
the
I'm more.
point of
I,
self-improvement.
I think that I'm more responsible, and I have a responsibility to myself and to my family
Mm,
to bring them around somebody who's not going to be responsible or who's not going to value what I value,
mm,
right? So if it's not a value to them,
mm.
then it's important for me to understand that they don't value, you know, what I value in the way that I value. I have friends and family now that don't value education. They think that people that have an education, they
We
think it's
too old for that shit. Fuck
they
that
think that, yeah, well, whether it's they ain't gotta be too. I know young people that feel like, you know, that going to college is a scam, and all, and that's fine. You can think what you want to think, but when it starts to impede on my safety or the
shit.
safety of my family,
Hmm.
then it's time for me not to be around that, and I'm
I'm
okay
gonna
with that.
put a little caveat in this for you because this is personal, Dr. Mo. What if it's just your own son and daughter?
Even if look, it could be my brother or my sister.
See, this is the hard truth they don't want to accept. They're not gonna like this podcast because you're saying what is involved in keeping yourself safe first.
Man, look, let me tell you something, Brian. My my
So
my
I'm with it.
family, my family and my friends, they know me. They know me well enough to know that I am going to check any bullshit,
Hmm.
right? And so if
Like,
you
where did you
want to,
get this shit from?
where did I get what from?
I'm talking about you telling, like I tell family members, they tell me, oh, this and that and that. I got this from Facebook. Nigga, do you realize that Facebook don't give two shits about you? In fact, Facebook is the Antichrist.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with anybody talking about they got something from Facebook. That's not even gonna be a conversation. But again, man, I just think that you have to be the person that you want to see,
Mm.
right? And so if I have a family member or I have a friend that don't know how to act, I'm not gonna stay there in the name of,
And
well,
I'm
we
certainly not gonna bring
family
my family
or
around this.
or or we friends. I'm not gonna do that. I had a similar situation recently when I was hanging out with, you know, some family and friends,
Like
and
people we grew up with.
right, and he was one in particular. He has a history
Mm.
of getting belligerent, and wanting
Oh,
to,
together.
disrespect people and all the rest of that. And as soon as he does that shit, it's one or two things happen. I'm telling you straight up right now, you got to go. You got to go, or I'm,
You gotta throw them out like Martin.
and I have no problem doing that. I have absolutely no problem doing that. And when you wake your drunk ass up from whatever stupor that you were in,
You
you
won't be hit when
right,
you wake up.
right. But and I'm not going to invite somebody
Right.
that if it's somebody that I feel like not necessarily that I can't control, but if it's somebody that I feel like
Can't
that's
control themselves.
right, that's uncontrollable, I'm not even
Mhm.
gonna bring them in certain settings.
Right.
I have certain settings with certain people that I already
Right.
know that these are two different groups. I
Right.
don't even want these people around one another,
Right.
mixing with
But
one another like
now
that.
these certain people that you don't invite to certain things are going to feel like you have alienated them. And how do you reconcile that for your own mental well-being?
Bruh, let me
Because
tell you,
that's what I think people don't understand about our community.
bruh, but that's not hard for me. Because
Right, for you, but
I'm
how
a
do we convey that to other people who may be trying to improve their lives, but every time they hang out around certain people, not only are the certain people going to disbehave, but they're going to tell you that you have changed
bro, I don't
and that you have done something that is egregious to the community as a whole.
bro,
How do
I don't
you do that?
I don't give seven shits about that. Because
Right.
I'm gonna tell them
And that comes
I
back to the mask on the airplane. When that airplane mask drop down, the instructions are to put it on yourself first.
bro, let me tell you, I am going to tell this person, those people, that I am not inviting them. It's not gonna be a surprise. I'm gonna tell them that I'm not
But a
inviting them
lot
to
of
this.
our people feel loyal to the game. And I don't blame them in a way because we were loyal to the game until we learned better.
Man, I'm not loyal to no game. I
But
think that's
we had to learn that. That
uh,
wasn't something that we got overnight.
yeah. Well, I realize that
Hmm.
I was loyal to a fault,
Right.
and I was loyal to a bunch of
Right.
bullshit. That's gonna keep you right where you at, being loyal to some
Right.
bullshit.
Right. And it's going to kill you
Well, are you gonna
because we
you gonna
understood.
kill yourself because
Right.
you can't level you can't go forward you can't go forward by staying backwards.
Right. And I give the example of Spike Lee. Let's take this to the celebrity level that I want to bring it back to. Spike Lee said to his wife and family, we have to stay right here in Brooklyn because our brand is Brooklyn. How are we going to live in New Jersey in a mansion when we can have the same mansion right here, downtown Brooklyn? Eventually, you know what his wife told him? You stay here and I'll take my children over here where it's safe because people keep showing up at 3 and 4 in the morning because you kept it real in the community, but I don't want these people in front of my house. I'm not in an elitism situation. I just want safety for my family. I
But I
just
don't.
want safety for myself. How do you reconcile that? Because we in the black community love to keep it real. We love to have street credibility to our actions. But what is it at the end of the day?
I think I think if you're not in the street, then you trying to have street credibility is
It's a problem in itself.
is nonsensical to me. You know,
You're
I
not getting arrested, but you street cred.
yeah, but I mean, but who do you want street cred?
People that have not developed yet. And they're willing to kill you based on their underdevelopment because they think that you changed or you have somehow betrayed where you came from.
Well, you don't
Rob
need
Reiner grew up in the Bronx.
you don't need to be around those type of people anyway.
Hmm. Hold on. What if it's people that you have no choice? This is
You
your own son and daughter.
but you still have a choice, even if it's your son and daughter. Even if it's
That's
even
what
if
I
it's your
want you to explain,
even
Dr.
even
Moore, because
even if it's
we
even if
have
it's
to
your
end this podcast, but that's what I want you to explain.
you always have a choice, bro. I don't care if it's your mom and dad, if it's
Here's the
your
problem with the actual facts in the Rob Reiner case. His daughter lives right across the street. She's the one that found that both of them were dead. The massage therapist that came for a weekly appointment with the Rob Reiner family, that there's some reason that they're not answering the phone. This is a scheduled appointment. She called the daughter, but she left. But the professional rub down person said, I'm leaving, but I want somebody to know that I showed up. I didn't neglect my duties. The daughter said, let me go over there and check right quick. I live right across the street. That's how Rob Reiner and his wife set up their family, because you have a duty to your family. But the same duty that he had for his daughter was the same duty that betrayed him and his son. That's what I wanted you to address. And not just for celebrities, but for
I don't know,
any
but I don't know
family.
why you. But I wouldn't say that he had the same duty to his daughter as he did his son.
Hold on, now I'm gonna bring it back home to you, Dr. Moore. Don't you have a duty to your daughter and your son?
Yeah, but my son and my daughter have a duty to themselves.
And that's what I want you to explain. But even in their wrong, there's some part of you that may even not sympathize with them, but it empathizes with them because they come from your flesh and blood. And that is what ultimately killed Rob Weiner and his wife. And we're talking about at the end of the year, where people should be festive, that even normal people, even celebrities, cannot surpass the reality of the mental health, even if just acute. Do you know what the son said? The son said, I don't know what happened, but I'm not guilty of anything. Was that a mental breakdown? Was that something that, because they want to bring back the death penalty for the way in which he murdered them. And California has a moratorium on death penalty cases. But his murder of his mother and father, prominent members of the community, and to us as an audience, it don't matter. This thing happens at every 4th of July, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every New Year's. You run into a family member that cannot control himself. And it may not end in death, as in the case, this is an extreme case in the Rob Reiner case. But there has to be some type of safety that you have for your immediate family, including your wife. You don't bring her to events where you know that your son, your flesh and blood, cannot control himself. Whether it be drugs, whether it be mental illness, whatever it was, not saying that this is what happens, but a cautionary tale, Dr. Moore. Land this plane.
Man, I don't feel like you know that This is super deep to me. I think that you have a responsibility to yourself, um, and I think that responsibility is to be, self-aware of who you are and who you bring yourself around, right? And I think that putting a label on it as, this is mom, this is dad, this is, um, son, daughter, or whoever. I think if they prove themselves not worthy of being at a particular function, then I think that you don't invite them to that. Because
Hmm.
I think inviting them to that, is inviting trouble.
Hmm.
And if it's something that they can't handle, I don't care if it's mom, dad, or whoever. I mean, again, if I'm just being transparent, I have absolutely no problem um not inviting or not attending events that I think, you know, might get out of hand at this point,
Hmm.
right? I'm just not going to attend, that
Right.
event. Or if I attend an event, I'm going to be mindful, of whether or not this is just a show face type of event. Meaning I'm
Right.
just going to go show face and then I'm going to be out.
I'm
But
out.
I no longer have any allegiance to any street code bullshit or anything like that. Means
Right.
absolutely nothing to me. You know, I
But
because
I see older people still applying it.
yeah,
And
well that's why they are where they are.
hmm, now I just saw, and I follow people online, which would already be your problem for me, Doctor. Bear with me one second. I see major criminals in the hip hop community released after 20, 30 years in prison. And they come out with the same mentality that they went in with. But here's the difference, they are on a positive attitude, but they still believe that a rat is a rat. They still believe that showing up is the way that you show that you still have street cred. You just did 30 years in prison. And the stipulations of your freedom were not associated with known criminals. But your street cred means more to you that you would show up, that you would virtually invite certain people to your podcast based upon your loyalty. I understand your loyalty. And you say a person like me, oh, you don't have street cred, you don't know nothing about what we go through. We got to bring, I came out, and so now I got to help these other people come out. But it's the same mentality as that plane. You got a little bit of oxygen, they dropped down the mask, you did what they said, but you failed in trying to help your siblings cross that same threshold. And you lost your life, and the siblings are still here. Your offspring is still here. It's a sacrifice that we can't judge. We can't judge Rob Reiner and his wife. But damn, we wish that they were still here and the son with the problem was gone. But that's not reality of life. We do have empathy for other people, even other people of other races. And I don't know an answer to this, Dr. Moore, and I leave it in your capable hands.
Really, what in my capable hands?
Don't get defensive, Dr. Moore. You ain't leave nothing for me, brother, because
No,
I don't
I'm
give a
no,
fuck.
I'm trying to. You say, Lee, what? I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to understand what you mean when you say you leave it in my capable hands. To Are you saying
To do what?
to solve something?
You started off this podcast with you saving lives, brother.
Oh no, you started off with saving lives.
We is French. I ain't start off with nothing. I
Yeah,
just showed. I just answered the phone call.
yeah, yeah, bro. I mean, listen, man. Even from a psychological or therapeutic perspective, you know, anybody coming to sit down, with me to have a session, I'm not ever putting myself in a position where I'm telling them that I can save them.
Come on, Doctor Moore. Now you're bringing it home. You gotta land this plane, brother, because you just said something very deep that most people don't get. As they're not even professional therapists, but they have a connection to certain people. Um, in this instance, your own family member, your own flesh and blood. But at some point, you got to cut them off, or at least keep them at a distance that is safe for you and your wife. You gave birth to these people. It's not supposed to happen.
Well, what do you mean? Just because you gave birth to someone, it's a difference, man. In my opinion, right? You can give birth to someone, but what responsibility do you give them, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, I was having a conversation yesterday, talking about family events. We had a family event, and there were a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different dynamics in terms of the people that were in the room. At this point, I was downstairs in the basement, and it was just mostly guys. Um, my son included, um, his cousin, um, and some other fathers, and we were talking about. Hold on one second. Um, I'm sorry, Brother Douglas. But
That's all
anyway,
right.
we were having a conversation, and the conversation kind of got into um, education versus starting your own business, being an entrepreneur, and all the rest of that stuff.
Yes, sir.
And I was saying that for me, education was a saving grace for me. I spent my first 4 years in the world, after high school, trying to figure the world out, thinking that I was going to get rich, doing something different. And
Hmm.
that I realized that didn't work for me.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that education is that for everybody, but education was that for me, right? Education was that you know um, put my life on a different trajectory. But I think as a parent, it's not enough to birth a child, but you have a responsibility. I think if you want to talk about saving someone, I think that if you birth a child, you have a responsibility to raise the child, because birthing them is not going to be enough. But you raise them to be self sufficient, so that they can go and stand out on their own, so that
Hmm.
they can stand up on their own, right? So just by virtue of there are a lot of people that give birth to children, right? But just giving birth to them alone is not going to be enough. So it's kind of like, and in my conversation last night, yesterday evening, I was saying it was kind of like black people in slavery, right?
Hmm.
And after the Civil War, and black people allegedly became free. Well, there was a responsibility of America, or the slave masters, to teach the then slaves the arts and sciences of civilization, so that they could go out and do something for themselves. Well,
Hmm.
because they didn't do that, those people who were in fact slaves didn't have the knowledge of self or the arts and or the knowledge of arts and sciences to be able to go out and do anything for themselves. So
Mm.
they in turn psychologically came right back to being a slave because they didn't know how to be independent on their own.
Mm.
So they volunteered their service to stay on the plantation, to
Mm.
continue to work for the slave master. So I'm saying, you have a responsibility to the community. If the community will listen and you can teach them, then yeah, you have that obligation. So I think that while I'm not raising the community per se, the only way I can raise the community to some degree is by being the example of what I would like the community to be.
That is
But as it
correct.
relates to my children, I can raise them in a different way because I got hands on directly and I
Mm.
can teach them to be independent. And that's
Yes.
why when my son was younger and he wanted, $200 shoes or whatever, I would say, well, I can give you, 100, and
Mm.
you can earn the other 100.
Mm.
So I can teach him how to be responsible. The same way with my daughter, you know, I can. I'm not just going to give her everything, but I
Mm.
can I can teach her how she can earn some money
Right.
as opposed to just giving. Because if you giving somebody something, they're never going to understand the value of it because
Mm.
they didn't earn it, right? So the same way with an education or anything like that. If you didn't go to school and earn a degree, you know you're not going to understand the value of that. So it's easy for you to say, "Oh man, I think college is a ripoff." But if you go to college and you earn that degree, you're going to value that differently,
Right.
right? And then you're going to take that degree and try to do something with it,
Mm.
as opposed to you not having that. It's easy for you to sit back and make and pass judgment on why you think it's a waste of time.
Exactly. And this is what we talk about at 3:27 a.m. in the morning on the East Coast. I think it's 12:37 in California. But two people who have intermittently run into each other are back together, just assessing our lives from the trajectory where we started to where we came to. And this is the show called Black Mental Health and Race. These are only discussions. Some of it gets into satire, black satire, and we do talk about serious subjects. I am your host, MF Doug AF, and I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and hopefully in some form or another, no matter what class or race you're in, you found some of this helpful enough to come back another month. We do these every 30 days or so, maybe sooner, maybe later. But we try to bring you a conversation from a mature perspective. Hopefully, the young people are patient enough to get it. Any last words, Dr. Moore?
In the words of Russell Simmons, peace and good night.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace to the God.
Peace to the universe. Call you back, brother.
All right.